Next month, British Columbians will be hitting the election polls, and now that the province's official opposition party, BC United, has collapsed, there really are only two clear choices left to whom is likely to form the province's next government. Will it be the currently governing NDP or the steadily overcoming Conservative Party of B.C.? I'm Drea Humphrey with Rebel News, and today I'll recap what some of the recent pre-election polls had to say about that. And you'll also hear some interesting predictions for the election from political commentator and former BC Liberal MLA Sheila Orr.
And I do think the BC Conservatives are going to win. And why? Political parties actually don't win elections. It's the ones in power that lose them. And I think the NDP are going to lose this.
Just 4 weeks until the October 19th election, and just a couple of days before the official campaign period begins, and David Eby's NDP and John Rusted's Conservative Party of B.C. remain neck and neck in recent pre-election polls. In an Angus Reid poll taken just days after BC United leader Kevin Falcon announced he was suspending his party's election campaign, a statistical tie can be seen, with Rusted's CPBC sitting at 44% and Eby's NDP at 43%. With BC United out of the picture, except for a few of its candidates expected to run in an effort to keep the party's official party status, support for the Green Party slightly increased to 10% compared to recent polls, but still the party race remains between the orange and the blue. A Research Co. online survey conducted on September 9th to the 11th showed that the BC Conservatives take a lead in popularity in BC's Fraser Valley, as well as southern and northern BC. In contrast, the BC NDP remains more popular in Metro Vancouver and on Vancouver Island. When looking at the province as a whole, the survey found that the NDP is sitting at 44% votes and the BC Conservatives at 42%. Continuing to predict that the two-way race is becoming somewhat of a coin toss. Now, some voters are still undecided, especially those who were planning to vote for BC United, a dilemma Eby believes should lead such voters to the NDP, and over the last few weeks, he's jumped at opportunities to throw shade on his political opponent, John Rusted, in hopes that those voters agree.
If you look at the history of BC politics, it's not a surprise to see a united right flank. I guess the surprise really is that the unification was around a party and a leader who doesn't believe that climate change is real. It appears on podcasts like Jordan Peterson's, who thinks that the problems in society started when women got access to birth control, and that 5G cell phone towers are weapons of genocide. I mean, these are really bizarre views to unify around. And I'm sure it was surprising to Kevin Falcon as well.
I think the whole "I disagree with you, so you're an extremist" thing is getting a bit old. And why does the NDP keep claiming Rusted is a climate change denier when he's acknowledged so many times before that climate change exists? It's just not the emergency that the left proclaims it to be.
Is climate change human caused?
There's no question that human is having an impact on it. There's no question in terms of that, And so
because that is antithetical to what you had boosted back in 2020. You are moderating your position then.
No, I haven't changed my position at all. You can go back and look at the clips from back then. I've said exactly the same thing. The issue here is that people are struggling, and we need a government that's going to focus on trying to make sure that they can have a good quality of life here in British Columbia.
Okay, so you're saying now you believe climate change has been caused by human activity, yes?
I'm saying that humans have contributed to climate change, yes.
Okay, is it at a crisis level?
It is not at a crisis level. There are many more things that I think are far more important. When people can't put food on the table, that's a big issue. And as a province, quite frankly, we should be concerned about that. When people can hardly afford to be able to pay their rent, when they can't have a dream of being able to ever own a home, when they're looking at leaving this province, those are big issues.
Another thing is, if Eby is so appalled at climate denier John Rusted, then why just weeks before the election is he rapidly adopting similar policies and stances to that of Rusted's Conservative Party? After all, last October, Eby approved the so-called harm reduction vending machines that have been giving out free crack pipes and cocaine snorting kits in front of some of Island Health's hospitals, but only after Conservative candidate Gwen O'Mahony raised viral awareness about the machines did EB suddenly decide that their placement needed to be reviewed.
Let's go get a free crack pipe and cocaine smoking kit. So now we can learn how to snort cocaine with this informational video right here.
And despite the BC Conservatives being one of the NDP government's toughest critics when it comes to how the province's addiction and mental health crisis has been handled, and despite the thousands upon thousands of British Columbians who have died from that crisis, it took the recent outrage, amplified by the BC Conservatives, about the heartbreaking death of the 13-year-old Brianna McDonald who overdosed in a BC homeless camp after the system failed her and her parents who desperately tried to get her help, for EB to finally decide that now's a good time to start saving some lives by offering involuntary care. Oh, and let's not forget the climate tax. The BC Conservatives have consistently been eager to scrap the province's carbon tax. But remember when Premier David Eby said this about Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre's invitation for all premiers to join his fight to axe the federal carbon tax?
That I'm calling on NDP Premier David Eby and Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh to cancel the April 1st carbon tax hike.
Remember, this is what Eby said.
I don't live in the Pierre Poilievre campaign office and baloney factory. I live in British Columbia. I'm the Premier. Decisions have consequences. And I know that Mr. Poilievre knows that his suggestion would leave less money for British Columbians. And
now Eby's suddenly saying this.
That if the federal government decides to remove the legal backstop requiring us to have a consumer carbon tax in British Columbia, we will end the consumer carbon tax in British Columbia.
So who's the climate change denier now? The real question is, will all this last-minute flip-flopping Eby's doing, which the Conservatives call it, be enough to give the NDP the edge they'll need if they don't want to get dethroned next month? Sheila Orr, a former BC Liberal MLA, which is the party's previous name before it became BC United, is a political commentator who personally aligns as a Liberal. I like Orr because she speaks her mind and isn't afraid of differing opinions. And she also has a good track record for correctly predicting some of the underdog election wins, such as that as former U.S. President Donald Trump's and former BC Premier Christy Clark's. Orr joins us now to tell you her predictions on whether she thinks the Conservative Party of B.C. are about to experience that same type of fate, and just how much the NDP's deeper campaign pockets is going to affect their odds at winning this election.
Well, I actually did a prediction on this about a month ago, and I do believe that the BC Conservatives will win. Now, why would I make that prediction? Well, number one, everybody forgets that 20% of the NDP caucus have left, and there's some pretty big players in there. They say, well, it's only 11. Well, I hate to tell you, but that's 20%. And another one just stepped down yesterday over in Esquimalt here on the island. So they're losing a lot of their folks. So they have to replace them with newbies well. And when you have, when you don't have an incumbent, it's a tougher race. So that is one thing. The NDP always have their standard 33%. They have a big machine, we know that. They have money, we know that. We know that they have 33% of the vote. That, we're not going to dispute that. But they don't have enough to win. I believe that now we've had this bloodletting last week, or whatever you want to call it, and an amalgamation or a disruption. I think now that's put the edge right up there. And I do think the BC Conservatives are going to win. And why? Political parties actually don't win elections. It's the ones in power that lose them. And I think the NDP are going to lose this. And I think there's now, with the way the situation is with one party, so now it's pretty simple. If you're a voter, it's like sort of how it used to be in the social credit days. You either have the right-wing party, you have the business people, or you have the labor folks. So when you go to the polls now, it's pretty easy. What are you going to do? You're going to vote Labor? You're going to vote for free enterprise. There's no middle stuff. Everyone says, oh, well, there will be a bit of middle ground. No, there isn't. I've been there. Everyone runs to the middle and says, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. It's such a gray area. And I am a liberal. I think I'm one of the last standing federal liberals. And I do believe in a lot of their policies. However, in this election, it's pretty simple. One way or the other. Much easier for the voter.
Yeah, that's true. Now that there's only two choices, left or right. Now, you mentioned how much money the NDP has. That is one of the things people say, okay, hold up, the Conservatives are doing well in the polls, but the NDP have the money. So I see you saying the Conservatives are going to win, but how are they going to overcome that financial hurdle?
Well, finances in campaigns are probably the biggest thing. And they were struggling. They were definitely struggling because people were frustrated. Well, we don't want to vote for the United, and who are you, and so on and so forth. So now it's different. The money is starting to run in. The business community is saying, now we know where we stand. Now we know what we have to do. The rules have changed. I've been in elections where you could pretty much spend what you want, but you could get corporate money. Well, now you can't. You can only get private money. So if I want to support the BC Conservatives, I can write them a check and that's it. And it has to be out of my personal bank account. So that's a bit of a setback. However, during the campaign writ, you can only spend $5 million, I think it is. But prior, that's a whole different ballgame. So these, you can have third-party advertising. So I think you're going to see the large business corporate, not necessarily corporations, but big businesses, small businesses, they're going to come out and advertise themselves. They're going to say something like, they're not going to say that they're sponsoring the BC Conservative Party. They're going to say, we are this company and we really believe in free enterprise. We need to get away from all this tax and spend from the NDP. They can use that word, but they can't use the word of the party they're going to support. So I think you're going to see a lot of that. And it's going to start. I know the NDP have already started with a negative campaign because they have the money to spend. But I do know the money is coming in now.
Now, you said you are a federal Liberal. So from your perspective, what do you think the shift towards the Conservative Party of B.C., which I would say is pretty conservative, why do you think so many British Columbians are attracted to that now? What happened?
Well, I think that a lot of British Columbians are frustrated about our cost of living. The NDP have a very big bloated government right now. And, they spend, the bureaucracy is massive. So the Conservatives will stop that. I know they will. They will. They don't believe in big government. How it's going to come down is interesting because you've got a lot of people that are still Liberals. So you've got people that are united. And what are we going to do? We're not really Conservatives. So I think what's going to happen is a lot of those people are going to make their decision on their candidate only. So you're going to get individual decisions with areas of, like in Kamloops, they've got Peter Miliband up there. He's just gone Conservative. He's very popular. And he had a big, he was very popular with the BC Liberals. He was popular with the United. So the people in Kamloops will go, we're going to still vote for Peter because Peter's a good guy. So you're going to see a lot of that around the province. They are going to vote for their candidate as opposed to, we're a BC Conservative. And I think that's going to be the swing.
If you appreciated this report, make sure you go to our special website called bcleadership.reports.ca. There, you can keep up on my previous reports and give us your email so you don't miss the future reports to come on the campaign trail. And while you're at it, if you'd like to chip in a few bucks to make these reports possible, we'd really appreciate that. Thank you for your support.